So welcome, everyone. Thanks for having breakfast with Nancy Larson and me and with Paula, with each other. It's nice to be in Northwest Ohio virtually this morning. I'm Shiloh Todorov. I'm the Finance and Fundraising Director for the Matriots PAC. And before I hand it off for the conversation, I know we have a mix here today of current members and people who may be looking to get to know us. So I just want to give you a little bit of an introduction to who the Matriots are. And then I'm going to hand it off for the conversation between Paula and Nancy. But I would encourage you to think about this as a conversation among all of us. So two ways, if you want to get your questions in, you can type the entirety of your question into the chat and Paula will pull it in from the chat. Or you can just say in the chat, hey, I have a question, and then she can call on you. You can take yourself off mute and go ahead and verbalize your question. And Nancy tells us that she's good on her feet, so she'll be ready. So Nancy is among 63 women that the Matriots PAC just announced on July 4th as our 2020 general election slate. This is the third year in which the Matriots has had a general election slate. And so in 2018 and 2019 combined, we made 110 endorsements, and 64 of those women are now serving in office in the state of Ohio, which puts us closer to our big, hairy, audacious goal of 50% women serving in Ohio office by 2028. And yes, that is just 9 years away. So think about whether or not I could use your help in getting there over the next 9 years as you listen this morning. I want to just do a quick screen share and show you the women that we have endorsed. They represent 35 different counties in Ohio. They are, here's Judge Jennifer Bruner. She's running statewide for the Ohio Supreme Court. And then there are several state house, both incumbents and first-time candidates, and down to the county clerk and attorney level as we think about the breadth and depth of the women that we are trying to get elected to office in November. So the Matriots was started in 2017. We are formed as a political action committee, a statewide political action committee, and we are nonpartisan. So instead of adopting one of the party platforms, we have created our own set of values with the idea that if we can create a big tent of shared values under which women can be elected and then have a platform to talk to each other, both because women legislate differently and tend to do a better job of reaching across party lines, and because of this shared values lens, we hope to put women in office who can not only write policy that allows women and families to build their economic power, but also to just advance legislation at all, because we'll have women able to talk across party lines. Without further ado, I will hand it off to Paula Ross to make an introduction of herself and then of our candidate, Nancy Larson. Good morning.
Good morning, Shiloh, and everyone, good morning.
Uh-oh.
Okay. I have the privilege now and to introduce Nancy Larson, who's the Matriots Endorsed Candidate for Ohio House of Representatives, District 47. Nancy's background is in social work, and she has spent her professional career advocating for underrepresented groups. She prioritizes the needs of women and their families. Sounds familiar? And she's fighting for affordable housing, healthcare, employment opportunities, an inclusive economy, and quality education. Additionally, she's passionate about protecting farmers and the environment. Nancy told our endorsement committee that as a representative, she'll be a voice for all people. And that means a lot to me. As someone who's done a little bit of recruitment and a little bit of campaign support for candidates for a lot of years, it's wonderful to see Nancy in this race. So Nancy, can you tell me why you decided to run?
Oh, I looked around at what was happening in 2016, like a lot of us, and said, I can't tolerate what's going on the federal level or in the state level. As a social worker, I work with people that are in pain and suffering, and I felt like I could have some impact on a policy level to address that instead of dealing with the fallout of what happens in Columbus, that if I were there, I could help stem the tide of some of the policies that create those situations in the first place. A personal trigger for me was coming up to a point of quitting my job when I was working for a hospice, and my sister was ill and terminal, and I couldn't get a medical family leave in order to take care of her because siblings are not considered close enough family members. So I made the difficult decision to quit my job and take care of her. And when she passed, I didn't have health insurance anymore at that point. So I got onto the Affordable Care Act, and personally kind of had to struggle with some of those questions that I'd been dealing with clients, you know, for a long, long time. And that was kind of me hitting the wall and saying, I can't stay on the sidelines of people trying to repeal health insurance for thousands of Ohio citizens. And that coupled with just my overall desire for the last part of my career to have as much impact as I could make it, I decided to run for this office.
We're glad you did. How's your fall campaigning shaping up, Nancy? Are there limitations now? You can't go door to door, no big events. How are you reshaping your politicking this fall?
It's kind of flying by the seat of our pants. We are coming up with creative ideas and having them. Well, the other day we were out at an ice cream place canvassing in a safe way, with most people having masks on and being able to social distance. And I had probably conversations with 60 people that were very enthusiastic and took my card and said they would support me. At the end of the night when the place was shutting down, the manager came out and said, you know, you can't be here doing this. It's like, why not? It was a wonderful setting to reach out to people. And I, you know, explained, we're not going door to door. Like I gotta be where the people are, and I don't want to mess up your business, and I'm not, you know, not wanting to irritate people. But he said, you know, no, it's too divisive. And we had, you know, one or two people complain. And so no more of that. So it's that kind of looking for opportunity and trying to do improv, you know, with how to go on with this. We will be doing a lot of phone banking. We will be doing a lot more signs than I expected to have to purchase because of COVID. And people, I hope, they're at home, they're walking around their neighborhood. I hope signs have a bigger impact than they might generally have. But it's having to make it up on the fly. But everybody's in the same boat.
Right. Well, we'd like to give you a chance to talk to the voters who are in a position to help. And what do you want voters to know about you and your campaign, and why should we help?
This has been a strongly red district. It's Western Lucas County, which is Ottawa Hills, Sylvania Township, White House, Little Towns, and west into Fulton County, which is mostly a rural county. But in 2018, the Dem who ran shrunk the percentage to, it's considered now a pink district. And I think with enough visibility, I will be able to flip this. I'm on the short list for the Ohio Democratic Party, who believe that this district is very viable. And they are looking closely at certain campaigns, and mine is one of them, to put money into it at the end. And I hope that they decide that it is viable. My platform includes all of the values that Shiloh was talking about. I do believe in healthcare as a human right. I would push for incremental change if that's all we can get with a supermajority of Republicans, but I do believe that it's worth looking at a Medicare for all system for Ohio. I absolutely believe in women's reproductive autonomy, and the opponent was the co-author of the 6-week abortion ban bill and is dedicated to overturning Roe v. Wade. That's his stated position. I have Moms Demand Action gun sense designation, and he is a stand your ground proponent. He wants to get rid of background checks and is in favor of open carry, all things that make our society more dangerous and make women's lives more difficult. My longest career was 12 years working in criminal justice, and I worked with the probation department in Lucas County doing counseling with convicted sex offenders for a 12-year period of time. So the focus of all of that was to address and ameliorate to whatever extent possible by rehabilitating offenders who, were harming children and women. So I'm the opposite of what the incumbent stands for. Everything that he does, I would do the exact opposite. And there's no question in my mind that he's doing a great deal of damage for women's rights in Ohio. He is the tip of the spear when it comes to getting rid of reproductive options for women, defunding Planned Parenthood. I have their endorsement also. So if you are concerned about those issues, I am a candidate who will bring and I'm persistent as all hell. Working with sex offenders for 12 years, it was a battle to chip away at denial and defenses and just come back and hang in there, month after month after. Most were on probation for 5 years. So I had a long time to try to work with them. I learned all through my career how to stick with a difficult task, and I take that mentality to the State House. It's not going to be it's going to be really hard, especially if we do not flip enough seats to Dem. But I'm used to that, and I'm up for that.
That's great. And could you, for a moment, just talk about how you would expand this work once elected, especially with regard to healthcare and education?
The Dems are serious about trying to get education fully funded. They, as I do, oppose the school voucher, school choice program, where money is constantly being drained out of the public school system. There's a strong core of people there that I would join as an ally to address that. We are having to reinvent the wheel when it comes to education at this particular point in time, but the Dems are much more focused on safety of children and teachers than are the Republicans. And I see myself, Teresa Fetter is a advocate, for those on the Senate side. And I would trust her judgment and guidance in terms of, for me as a newbie, walking in and having to kind of get on board. Healthcare, I've been down at the State House lobbying with Single Payer Action Network. I do have a pretty solid understanding of what's possible at the state level, and implementing those things. If we had a Dem majority, we would be able to go somewhere with those plans to get healthcare costs contained, with Ohio saving a lot of money by putting into effect a single payer system in Ohio.
Thank you. So what role do our endorsements, like your endorsement from the Matriots, have in your campaign? I know you've had a lot of endorsements lately, and how is that helping?
When I first found out about the Matriots from my friend Andy, she spoke about you all the second time I ever talked to her. So she's a great ambassador, and I did not know that there was an organization. So the first thing that it helped me with was a feeling that I'm not going to be in this alone. As a first-time candidate and somebody that has never run for office before, it was great to hear
You mean there's like a group of women that want other women to be in the state house? That is very exciting and cool. And it really gave me a sense that I had, a floor underneath me of support from people that I didn't even know yet. As I have gotten to know the Matriots, it's been very hands-on. Alyssa came up to a wine fundraiser that we had here. I've had a chance to just actually meet and interact with people, and it really is a core of emotional support, cultural support for making the change that I'm trying to be in, putting myself into the state house. The money part of it will be essential. I, as a social worker, refused to call people during the early days of the pandemic and ask them for money. And I just, told the parties, yes, we're supposed to continually raise money. I can't do that. I cannot call people right now and act like business is normal and ask people for money. So I am behind my fundraising goal at this point. I called people and I talked to them, asked how they were doing, but I'm only now starting to be comfortable that people have dealt with this crisis enough to be emotionally, mentally able to have somebody, perhaps ask them for a contribution. So if the Matriots are able to fund more of that for me, I can make up some of that ground that I feel I lost because I didn't feel it was appropriate, to be putting that request in front of people when we were all just reeling from having to deal with the pandemic crisis.
Be interesting to know if there's a gender aspect to that attitude, and whether there are male candidates who are a little bit less sensitive.
Mm-hmm. I would expect so. I mean, I got a little bit of blowback from the party, but in talking to other women candidates, they felt, as I did, that we all had so much to cope with, whether, kids at home or just the job disruption, trying to work from home, and such economic insecurity, over those months. Like, nobody knew how it was all going to shake down. And I just, like, if somebody called me and was all chipper asking for money, I would have been, so I didn't want to do that to anybody else.
I'd just like to offer a different way of looking at that. Nancy, you are giving so much to this campaign, and it's an important campaign, and we're all with you. But when you ask for money, you're not asking for money for you. You're asking for money for a campaign. And if you can make that division, I think it gets a little bit easier to ask. And remember, always, you're the one giving the most. You yourself.
Thank you. I can do that a little bit better now because but again, as a social worker, mental health professional, I know what people are feeling when they're on the other end of the phone, and my impulse is to deal with them on that level and not, so. I did get a contribution from a guy in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that just came out of the blue, $1,000, and I had no idea who he was. I called him up and said, thank you. How did you find my campaign? And he said, he worked in swing states, and he went campaign by campaign to find, he said, I'm looking for women. I'm looking for pro-choice women. I'm looking for gun safety women. And you checked all those boxes, and I am supporting you. And I was like, whoa, so there's been those kinds of things too, where it just fell out of the sky for me. And that was pretty cool.
That's very cool. So Matriots believe when women lead, Ohio prospers. Are you noticing more women stepping up, either as candidates or as supporters during this critical and time of three crisis?
Absolutely. I had the pleasure to do a leadership training in Columbus, and that was a group of progressive candidates and their staff. That there is an organization called Lead Ohio that is dedicated to training women how to, not just women, but most of the people were women. There was a smattering of guys, but
a great deal of us are women, and the training was thorough, it was complete. And I know now counterparts all across Ohio that are trying to do the same thing that I'm trying to do. A lot of them have gotten Matriot endorsement, and it's neat to see their faces on that, a screenshot along with my own. We have strong contenders to take over these seats that are being filled by, in my opinion, much less qualified men. I wish that I could be going door to door and seeing the response from women, but when I'm out, like at the ice cream shop, I specifically went to women. I talked to younger women, I talked to women with children, and those were the people that were extremely receptive, which isn't to say men aren't. One guy gave me his card and said, call me, I'll phone bank for you. But yes, I think my message, and Republican women want reproductive rights to stay intact. Independent women want reproductive rights to stay intact, and most are not aware of what the incumbent has been doing. And when I inform them what his history has been in the 5 years that he's been there, they're not happy that he is doing that. So a lot of it is getting the message out and informing them, because 9 times out of 10, people do not know who their state rep is. They have no clue what they are doing. And mailers to get that out is a large part of what I need to do.
It's great to hear about how you're campaigning and what you will do once elected. Does anyone else have questions for Nancy or thoughts about what we've been talking about?
I do. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Could you?
Hi, my name is Lindo Moby, and I'm calling in from Akron, Ohio. Certainly, I can appreciate what you're going through during this terrible pandemic. Just curious as to, are you using social media? There's a lot that you can do on that platform that is not terribly expensive, but you can find somebody young, and I know that's what I did. I mean, some of these young folks, they know how to utilize this social media platform in such a way that I didn't even think of when I was running for re-election. So there are lots of things you can do on that platform. Some of it costs a little money, but some of it's not as expensive as you would think. And how many votes do you need to be the champion of the victor of the campaign?
Hi, Linda. Thanks for tuning in. I need a very comfortable margin would be 28 or 9,000 votes. In 2018, there were 50,000 votes cast. 29,000 went for the incumbent and 21,000 went for the Dem challenger. So we don't know what turnout is going to be with absentee voting and whatnot, but there was a margin of 8,000 votes between those two races. And if I can close that gap, if it's a similar turnout, I will win. Yes, I started this campaign with a 17-year-old as my campaign manager. And he and I were going it alone for the first year, because I actually started this right after 2018 endorsement was given out. I have been planning this for the last 2 years. But I got on Twitter with this kid's help and got my website put up. I now do have a part-time person that I'm paying to help with social media, and she's great. She started an Instagram, and we just started digital ads last week. So I have tapped into that millennial demographic to be useful. And there's a guy in Akron who's helping me with my data mining and how to identify who on Facebook we can get the ads out to. So I think we're pretty well covered with that. And I hope that I have mixed feelings about Facebook deciding not to allow political ads. If they pull back on that, it's going to hurt
our kinds of campaigns because we don't have the money to do television or radio. So I don't know how they're going to come down on that issue of whether they will allow political ads to continue this cycle.
Sure.
Andy, you've been close to this campaign since the very beginning. Do you have a question or anything to share?
I guess the long story, unfortunately, and I know this is the time I've met, I really appreciate how women are trying to step up to the plate here, such as Dr. Amy Acton. And I know she works for a Republican governor. The part of that is I'm very upset with the way the current legislature has treated Amy Acton and her beliefs on the science of the pandemic and making choices based on data instead of I don't know what instead of economics. So I guess I need to know, and I guess I already know, but I wish Nancy would share her beliefs on supporting science as opposed to supporting small businesses, as opposed to supporting what is usual in the state.
Your audio was a little weird there, Andy, so I'm going to kind of recap what you said. Andy was talking about the need to pay attention to science as we go forward in making these decisions, and Dr. Amy Acton has had huge support among a large proportion of Ohioans, like 85%, 89% trust what she's been saying, and I've been happy with her leadership to Governor DeWine. Yeah, I'm a scientist in terms of my background with paying attention to research and trying to find best practices. I absolutely will use research as a base for me going forward and making decisions. The incumbent is anti-science. He signed on to a bill that you all might be familiar with that required doctors to try to reimplant ectopic pregnancies into a woman's uterus. That medical procedure does not exist. Yet they wrote a bill asking for that to be what a doctor had to do under pain of charging them with capital murder if they did not do this non-existent medical procedure. That kind of foolishness is just has no place, especially in any kind of leadership role in the state of Ohio. He also was involved in legislation to silence Dr. Acton's public health orders, and the House passed a bill that would give her 14 days of her health orders, at which point, if they didn't like them, that they could ignore them and overturn them. That is also absolutely not acceptable. And I have to believe that a lot of what they went after her for is because she's a woman. And that if a man had been in that position of having that authority, they would not have felt so entitled to try to strip a male person of his rightful authority and his job responsibilities. So on those two scores, it's another way that the incumbent has showed his ignorance, I think, and his disdain for the common good.
Thank you.
I have a question for everyone, but beginning with you, Nancy. What more do you think needs to be done across the board to get more women elected to office in Ohio?
Speaking for myself, I think that we need to do a better job of encouraging women that we do have the skills that it takes to be there. I had to go through my own internal thing but I'm not a lawyer. And, you have to be a lawyer to be there. And if I'm writing legislation, how am I going to do that if I'm not a lawyer? I finally decided that the skills that are most needed to be there are not knowing how to be a lawyer, but to take the concern for people, the compassion for people's well-being, the commitment to actually be a public servant that's the core skill that is needed there. And I have that. The legislation is offered to you. I came to understand that other groups write that legislation, whether it's ALEC on the right or some other people on the left, and that I personally do not have to be responsible for writing these bills. I have to be responsible for reading them, for understanding them, and for deciding, is this something that's going to help the common good? And I know how to do that. I'm smart. I continue to learn. I continue to find out about things. So if there's women who have that connection and that empathy for making people's lives better, and they are intelligent enough to read, those are the two main skills. And I think that I know every time I have hit that wall to say, I'm not qualified to do this, who do I think I am? I just picture my opponent, who's 30-some years old, has never had a job outside government, does not have any experience in healthcare, but was put in charge of the health committee because of the Republicans' intention to try to address abortion rights. He's not qualified to be in that position at all. And I had to be able to look at myself and say, seriously, which one of us is going to serve the people of Ohio better? We have to talk to ourselves about that. We have to hear that from other women to say, you can do this, you are qualified, and to stop, downplaying our own accomplishments, downplaying our own, I'm of a generation where that still was pretty much ingrained in me, and I have those internal battles. I hope that women coming up have much less of that to have to fight against. I hope so. But the more that we can encourage that the skills women have in spades are the skills that are needed in all levels of leadership in our country. I have never thought of myself as a leader, because leaders don't look like me. They look like that. And I've had to work with myself on that. And it helped when Andy told me about the Matriots being there, like, Matriots think women are leaders. Cool. And that women should be leaders, and that we should be 50% of the people at the table. That kind of messaging does help.
It's good to hear you talk about what it takes to help women get ready to do this. Mm-hmm. Anybody else have thoughts on how, once women are ready, we actually, what can be done to help them get elected? What more can we do? What more can the Matriots do? Any ideas?
I also want to say that Andy getting involved in my campaign, I have incredible women on my team, and I have 13 people right now. Initially it was all women, and I had to the 17-year-old was a guy, so it was he and then like a whole bunch of middle-aged and up women. I had to specifically say, I need to recruit men to be on because it's going to be all women otherwise. And now it's a nice 50-50 balance. So allowing women to join with me and having their support has been absolutely vital in putting together my campaign team.
Yeah, this is Linda Mobian again. I certainly agree with everything you've said. I think for me, what I have found is that when you identify women and just walk up to them and just ask, why haven't you thought about running for office? Mm-hmm. Because many times they just need to be told by somebody else that we see something in them that they obviously have not seen in themselves. Mm-hmm. And because if you can run a household and you can run the PTA and you can run almost everything that is organized, you can do this work. It's just a matter of stepping out and studying and reviewing and asking the right questions and getting as much support as you can by talking to others. But again, I have seen so many men, as she's described, who would just step up and just go out there, not knowing a thing about what they're doing and not knowing what they're talking about, but coming across like they're experts on the topic. And as women, we tend to know more, we tend to dive in and get the information correctly. And we step in all the time to take charge and do things, but we don't see those as transferable skills. I'm also in mental health. I am a mental health administrator and been one for more than 40 years and been in politics for more than 20 some years. But again, it was something that I just stepped out and decided to do. No one tapped me on my shoulder and say, oh, you're ready. I just thought, I said, okay, I'm a person who loves this community, and I love people, and I know what it means to help others because someone has helped me all my life. And, just started ticking away at the things that I could do and just jumped in there. And again, it's taken some years to get to the point where I am today, but I think that's what we need to do for more women. Tap them on the shoulder and say, look, you can do this.
The tap on my shoulder, Linda, was a mass email that went out to Emily's List supporters. And they said that my district was in need of a pro-choice Democratic woman to run. And I started looking at this guy's record and I said, okay, I did try to recruit other younger people or other folks, and there were no takers. And then I just said, okay, but without that nudge from them of saying, we've done the research and this guy is bad for women's interests in Ohio and we need somebody to step up. That was the call for me that made me, but they've been much more involved in national stuff. I have not felt any real hands-on. They have really good training that I made use of at the beginning, but I certainly have not felt them, as a wind behind my back the way that I have the Matriots.
Sure.
Anybody
I want
else?
to just also say that it's really hard to fight the incumbent curse. And it's really difficult to, because most of the incumbents are men, and then you have a woman trying to break through, and people tend to support incumbents as opposed to new candidates. So it's very, very difficult to kind of start breaking that, and it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in endorsements or in asking for money, that kind of stuff, because everybody wants to have a seat at the table or be in somebody's pocket. So it's nice that the Matriots will go out on a limb for first-time candidates as well. So that's really encouraging, because it's going to take people supporting first-time candidates to start saying it's okay to do that, because there is that incumbent curse. Nancy, could you talk about the news that you got last night?
I'm applying to a lot of different places for endorsement, and one was the Ohio State Medical Association, PAC. I found out yesterday that they are not endorsing me. They are endorsing the incumbent instead. So I was chatting with people on the call before we officially started to say, I was up at 3 o'clock this morning writing the Ohio State Medical Association PAC my thoughts on why they had said no to me and yes to the incumbent. And basically I'm asking for them to explain to me how they could endorse this person who is totally anti-science, anti-health, anti-woman. And yes, I think that they endorsed him because they think he's going to win again, and that I am not as viable a candidate. But what they ignored is that he has done legislation that increases lead exposure to women and children in the buildings that he owns, that he has defunded Planned Parenthood, causing the decrease in health services that those women receive. He has voted against gun safety legislation that increases the risk to our citizens on that score. I mean, there's numerous things that he's done. Pardon me?
Right. Dr. Acton.
And yes, action against Dr. Acton. All of these things
things that I think that the medical folks would not be happy with him about. And I'm calling them to task for it. I expect them to answer how they could look at these facts of his history and go ahead and give him their stamp of approval, as opposed to my own opinions, which seem pretty clear to me would increase the health of the citizens of Ohio. So having to fight for endorsements also is part of the battle. I don't know that this comes with any financial support, but it's meaningful to me that he can put this on his website and say he has these people's approval, despite all of the things that he has done to argue against the health and well-being of us.
And they probably don't even know his record. And so that's excellent.
Well, I'm not letting it go by. I'm fighting to start with now with these people, and this is what I would do if I was there. I might as well just start it with these people and tell them this is my reaction to what you have to say, and it's not acceptable. I've asked them to rescind his endorsement. If they don't want to give it to me, fine, but he absolutely does not deserve it. And I also told him I'd be talking publicly about it. So I'm talking publicly about it.
Very good. Well, I think that's excellent.
I think one of the strengths of the Matriots is we understand the value of personal connection. Good morning, Eloisa. Good morning. And I've always told candidates, in an ideal world, Nancy, you'd be able to shake the hand of every voter in this district, and they'd all want to vote for you. Once they met you, once they heard from you and understood what you're about. Can't do that. And we tend to focus on, those wholesale kinds of ways of talking to people like TV, but the retail, the person to person is so valuable. So I hope that you and all of us will take advantage of that in our own connections and our own networks to talk about why we're supporting Nancy and why we're supporting other women. Before we wrap up, anybody else have questions or suggestions for Nancy? Yeah, Mary.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, my internet connection is a little shaky here, so let me know if there's a problem. But I just wanted to say, Nancy, that I'm a member of the Matriots, thanks to my friend Andy. And I also live in the district that you are running for. And so I'm looking forward to having a sign in my yard. And I'm also looking forward to talking to a lot of my neighbors and seeing if they would be willing to do the same. And piggybacking off of what Paula just said, getting the chance to meet you, I was going to be your advocate anyway, but I really admire you and the way you presented everything today, and thank you for your courage in doing this. And you have my full support, and I'll do whatever I can. So
thank you. If you have a big enough backyard that we can social distance, invite your neighbors over and I'll come for sure.
I'll give some thought. Thank you. Yep.
Anyone else? Well, as we get to the close of our conversation, Nancy, is there anything else you'd like to say to this morning's audience?
Thank you, Matriots, for your endorsement. If you are considering joining, I highly encourage you to do so. This is a very, very important PAC for Ohio women. They are doing incredible work. The success that they've had in just the 3 years that they've been up and running just blows my mind. And women can do this, and we are the only ones who will do it. So just help out in whatever way you can.
Thank you, Nancy.
Shiloh to close us out.
You're a complete inspiration. Thank you. I'm very excited to be on your team by way of being a member of the Matriots and staff member of the Matriots. Thanks for taking the time this morning. I do want to ask people to be on our team because as COVID has pointed out, but is not new, the people who are impacted first and most negatively by what we're seeing going on right now are women. And even more specifically, women of color and women living one flat tire away from financial catastrophe. these are the women that stand to suffer most when we face the kind of crises we're in right now. We're on the front lines of child rearing, keeping our communities healthy, but we're not on the front lines when it comes to establishing family-friendly policies because we're underrepresented at the tables where these policies are crafted and legislation is enacted. So as matters stand, women make up only 29% of our elected leaders. And as I said earlier, that's why we're trying to get to equity, 50%. And the crisis underscores that we do need more women in office. So if you agree with our mission, we invite you to join us by becoming a Matriots member and making a contribution. In order to elect more women this year, those 63 women you see on our slate card, we need to raise $1 million. And I have a personal goal because it has such a rhythm to it of having 2,020 members in 2020. And we're at 1,450 today. So I would love to have you help us work on that goal. We're going to raise the money. We're going to get the membership every $100, $200, $500, $1,000 at a time. So I would love for you to go to matriotsohio.com and join us. And I'll follow up in your email with other ways to get to know us, including to take a closer look at that slate card. So thank you for joining us this morning. I'm so pleased to have your attention. And Nancy, thank you for your courage to run. We wish you luck.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.